Dave, there's been a lot of controversy. The CBO report on the minimum wage certainly generated a lot of controversy, a lot of buzz, right? I mean, Republicans right away said, this proves it's a job killer. We've been telling you all along, raising minimum wage is going to kill jobs. And Democrats said, this proves it's going to lift people out of poverty. We've been telling you that all along. What does it prove?
Well, first of all, this isn't really original research. It's more a synthesis of what's already out there, right? But at the same time, it's just pure cannon fodder this week, and I think it's helping Republicans more than Democrats because of the job loss projections they had in there, employment loss projections, and Democrats are kind of on the defensive about it, and a lot of left-leaning economists are coming out questioning the way that CBO used the data. Basically, the good of the proposal, the big benefits, you're going to lift, they say, like 900,000 people out of poverty. That's great.
Right.
They say it would lead to the loss of about 500,000 jobs.
Might. Right?
But, yeah, the big caveat is they say it could be anywhere from almost not noticeable up to 1 million. So there's a huge range there. But of course, Boehner and his people were jumping all over this, saying this is why this is a bad idea. So even though this isn't like original research produced, it's being bandied about, and it's become a big talking point in this whole discussion.
Well, what is the evidentiary? What's the evidence behind this claim that I've heard for decades that if you raise the minimum wage, unemployment is going to go down? I mean, we certainly have a lot of evidence out there. State after state after state has raised the minimum wage. The federal government has raised it. Has it ever resulted in the massive loss of jobs? So
the logic, obviously, is that as you raise the wage, you're making workers more expensive, and that bosses, especially small businesses, are going to have to cut back on the amount of hours. So what we're talking about is the loss of job equivalence, right? Like I have to cut back, his 5 hours, her 4 hours. So we add them up, and that's like a job when we hit 40 hours or whatever. As you'd imagine, the analysis of this over the years is really mixed. There are some studies that have shown that this leads to lost hours and lost work for people who are trying to get into the workforce. And there's studies that show it really doesn't matter. And some of the notable recent ones showed that they looked at I think it was New Jersey and Pennsylvania, right? When New Jersey did a wage hike, like you look at what happened on the border there. Was there a huge difference in employment on each side in fast food restaurants and whatnot? Yeah. And those studies showed not really. So there's that. And this, keep in mind, this tends to unsurprisingly fall along political lines, right? More conservative economists have found evidence of more job loss, whereas more liberal economists have found that it really doesn't have an effect. And this is the same debate we have every 5 years when we talk about raising the minimum wage. But when you think about it, usually these business lobbies have predicted basically the end of the world when we talk about raising the minimum wage. Now there may be modest effects on employment after we do this each time, but the world never does come crumbling down. We don't see massive unemployment or any of that. So. And
the other argument that I hear, two other arguments on this in terms of why it is the right thing to do the raise the minimum wage. One is, from an economic point of view, if you're putting more money in people's pockets, and it did show that 16.5 million Americans will have a fatter paycheck. So they have a fatter paycheck, and then some of those people, as you pointed out, are going to be lifted up actually above the poverty level. They've got more money in their pockets. They're going to spend it. That spending is going to mean more demand. That more demand means they got to provide more services, which means more jobs, right? So,
yeah, look at...
Not to mention that the people who are getting more money are happier, probably more productive, are going to do a better job, deliver more.
Look at Walmart. One reason that they've had to revise projections down is because cuts in food stamps, right? We're talking about people who are on the lower end of the economic scale. A lot of them, these aren't all teenagers.
Spend every money they can get.
Exactly.
Every penny they can get.
So that's one reason a Walmart, would maybe consider getting on board with this. Yesterday, there was news that they were thinking about it, and then they told us at Huffington Post that they're not, that they're remaining neutral. They've supported it in the past, in part because their customer base, they know that a minimum wage hike puts more money in their pocket, and you balance that against them having to pay their workers a little more.
Right. And the other argument I hear is that if you really take the Republican argument to its extreme, then there should be no minimum wage. I mean, like, if raising it from $7.25 to $10.10 is going to kill jobs, well, then let's lower it to $4, right? And nobody's arguing that. So
I wouldn't say that.
That's true. Now, some people think
it's not even a theoretical for some people, but that's like a GOP primary thing, right?
Yeah.
Where everybody says, "I want to get rid of it," or let's make it
the minimum wage entirely.
8 cents. Yeah.
But that logic, I think the logic follows that then any minimum wage at all, right, would have the same impact.
And what they say when you talk about raising it, what a lot of conservative opponents will say, well, if you're going to make it $10.10, why not make it $25 an hour? It's like, well, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about moving it from $7.25, which is very low, and we all know nobody can live on that. We're talking about moving it up to $10.10, which is not beyond reason.
So the last poll that I saw on this, 75% of the American people, Republicans and Democrats, say raise the minimum wage.
It polls ridiculously high.
Yeah.
People
why are Republicans
very
taking a stand on this? I saw Senator Rob Portman from Ohio, who's not crazy right-winger, on Morning Joe this morning, right, out there saying you can't raise the minimum wage. I mean, they really have.
This is not controversial outside the Beltway. It's a heated, divisive issue over at the Capitol, but it's not once you get outside of here. As you said, this easily crosses party lines. In just about all the polling, it's two-thirds are saying yes, like hike this thing.
Higher.
Yes.
Higher.
Yes, make it higher.
All right. So they did it when George W. Bush was in the White House. That's the last time they raised the minimum wage. Republicans voted for it. Why won't they do it? Is it just because Barack Obama's president and he wants it?
Well, I think it's partly the way the House composition has changed. It's moved further and further to the right. I think more moderate Republicans, certainly 10 years ago, were a lot more open to this. And it's traditionally been a very reasonable thing. Everybody accepts the fact that since the mid-'30s, we've had a minimum wage, right? This came out of the Great Depression. There was a lot of labor strife surrounding this, getting this established, along with other basic worker protections. It's been for granted that it's there, that periodically we've got to raise it because the cost of living just keeps climbing, so let's be reasonable. But now suddenly it's this very divisive issue, and Republicans are, many of them are clearly aligned with the trade groups that don't want to see this thing moved. We're talking about retailers and particularly the restaurant lobby, National Restaurant Industry, Restaurant Association. They want, especially the tip minimum wage, that's still $2.13 in a lot of places. Which,
can you imagine?
It's crazy to think about that a restaurant chain only has to pay a server $2.13 an hour, and that they're going to rely entirely on tips. So that is one thing that is a real sticking point here. The restaurant lobby wants that pulled out of there.